Welcome to Back of the Box. We are back for episode 2 of our brand new video podcast. No more lion theme in the background. I changed things up. I'm joined here today by Nicholas. Nicholas, do you want to just do a brief introduction of yourself
Yeah,
again, since it's been
it
a hot
has been a
minute?
while. Hi everybody watching. My name's Nick. I'm a firefighter with a local agency here in Utah. I've been a firefighter coming on 3 years now in January. Um, I'm an advanced EMT, and I've been an advanced EMT for, man, I think 2 now, huh, Ben? Because you were my instructor.
Yeah, 2
And
years.
I've been teaching with EMT Utah for 2 years now as well in January. So we're getting there.
I remember approaching you in the hallway
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that like
about
it was
coming up,
yesterday.
being an
Where
intern.
you threw your hand around me. I was, like, one of the last ones leaving the classroom, and you threw your hand around me, you said, "Hey, you wanna be an intern?" I said, "Sure."
And look at you
The
now,
rest
running that whole
rest
department.
was history,
Yeah.
but I'm glad to be
Okay.
here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to get this going again and keeping these things a little shorter and having it be virtual. Hopefully we can do it more often.
Sure.
And we can have like up to 10 people in this thing if we
Oh,
wanted to.
wow.
Not that I want
Sure,
to,
the
uh,
potential.
but we could have definitely more people involved. Um, so you've been on, 3 years now, you said, right? I've been in EMS I actually did the math a couple days ago, and 11 years has kind of been my default setting of this is how long I've been in healthcare. And that doesn't include like lifeguarding and whatnot in high school because I don't necessarily count
Sure.
that. Um, but I hadn't been adding years
Mm,
over the last like 4 years. So I'm actually now at 14 years of healthcare and having my EMT and doing all the fun stuff. Um, so I wanted to kind of talk today about just like burnout, right? I think it's a huge topic, um, that we could spend potentially hours on and go way more in depth on things. But what causes it? How do you like, what are things that you do or people can do to prevent it? What causes it? How do you know if it's coming on? I think a lot of people get burnt out and then don't recognize it in themselves before it's too late and has become a larger, more catastrophic issue for themselves, both from a career standpoint, but also affecting their personal
sure.
lives. And I think that's also partly why I think we have such a high like divorce rate and abuse rate in terms of like alcohol and things like that and suicide and depression. And because not only is the job super stressful, right? But then you tack on hours and overtime and multiple jobs and the burnout then compounds that issue. And it's something that I don't think us looking into ourselves necessarily always will
Sure.
recognize the fact that we are being burned
And I
out.
agree, and it's not something that is ever taught, right? You go to school to become one of these specific professions, and there's never a day dedicated to understanding the signs and symptoms of burnout in this career field. Because no matter where you are, it's gonna happen to you, right? It doesn't matter if you're at the busiest department or the slowest station in the world. It doesn't matter if you're at a
Or if
level
you're a
1
coach
trauma.
or offense leader.
Exactly, right? No one ever understands what the signs and symptoms look like because it's different from you to me. But typically, it's always brought on by, in my world, it's the yes man attitude is a big thing for me. Um,
But hey, pick up your shift. But sure,
yeah, and that's my
comes
biggest
with it.
factor
Okay.
to my burnout personally is the yes man
Yeah.
attitude about,
Yeah.
like, just because I am the person that you can reach out to and I come help, I I'm getting better at it, Ben. I'm getting better
Yeah,
at
that's
it.
the thing. Although you always come and help, but it's always, well, I'll let
Ye
you know.
I'm getting better at
Never,
saying no,
never let me know.
um,
Taking vacation.
but man, it's hard, especially for a young guy like me who's still trying to make a name in this career field.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to try to justify mentally, taking time off when it almost doesn't feel earned yet. Um, a and
Yeah. But I mean, I get it.
yeah,
I do. Because I was I was that guy
Sure.
as for a
Yeah.
long time, working all the hours, not taking vacation for like 2 reasons, right? Because you don't feel like you've earned it quite yet, or like you don't have anything big planned
True.
or whatever. And so like just, um, and you take that one vacation a year or whatever the crap it might be. And, at the end of the day, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, like not during, it wasn't actually before COVID. It was 2018, 2019 when I really just kind of turned into like, they give us PTO, use the
Yeah.
PTO. I think that's the biggest thing that companies give us paid time off, utilize it.
That's another one of my faults, Ben. I won't lie to you. I am currently a month away from capping out my vacation time.
Mhm.
Um, back to the same thing. It almost feels wrong to put in the request to take it off,
Yep. No, I
you
get it.
know? And it's the same with sick time. I have a bunch of sick time. Um,
I feel like sick time, when you have designated sick time and PTO time, I feel like sick time is slightly different
it is
in my eyes.
the usage of it
Personally.
is similar though.
Correct.
I gotta be almost on my deathbed for you to get me to call out of work. Um, because I can actively die at the station or driving an ambulance, before I take sick time. But and this is something that I learned just recently this summer about me in the mental health aspect of actually taking time for yourself. But I was noticing I was actually apologizing to my crew that I wouldn't be on shift that day or those 2 days
Yeah.
because I was just taking some time. And even like my captain is a big travel guy. Um, he loves to travel the world, and so he's a guy that uses and abuses his vacation time, and I absolutely love the fact that he does that because he
Yeah.
still loves coming to work. He loves his time off, and then he works another job that gives him the ability to do that. Um,
And that's what he loves his job, and he's been in it for X amount of years because he utilizes the time off,
and yes,
right?
I agree. And,
Ask me ask me how much PTO I currently have at the
how
hospital.
much?
34 hours. Granted, I just used a ton of
Sure,
it. I just used like 80 hours of it like a few months back, like a month ago. So like I didn't have a lot to begin
sure,
with because I utilize my PTO. Um, but if I'm getting, because like I can take 2 weeks off at a time, right? And so I always keep a few hours in there for, you know, emergencies or things like that if I need to. Like you're gonna have to cover a couple of shifts. But if I'm getting over 100 hours, I'm like, okay, it's time to take a vacation because I've incurred all this time now.
right,
And the amount of time it takes you to incur all that, like you've probably been working long enough. It's time to go and do
sure,
something, even if it's just a staycation or camping or
sure.
something, right?
You said you currently have 34 hours of
34 hours of
34?
PTO.
You wanna take a guess of what I have?
No, if you're close to capping, you have to have a couple hundred.
I do have a couple 100 hours of vacation. I
Yeah.
have 342 hours of
Yeah.
vacation.
Yeah. Time to start using that, bud.
Yeah, it's
Again, even if you don't do anything
no,
with it,
and that last one I took, just because I used it for a set, either last month or the month before that.
back in back in June.
It was not back in June.
It was back in June.
Yikes.
It
That
was
was
back in actually, I remember it was
it
back
was
in
just a
June, bud.
staycation. I just stayed home, got 10 days off, just, I still worked the part-time job, but it's it's not the same mental, um I don't need the same mental capacity to work my part-time job.
And that's why, so going away from like using PTO and vacations and all that, that's the other way that I cope with burnout, right?
Sure.
Is people ask me this all the time, but like I used to work in the state prison and there were the options of like overtime was an abundant
Sure.
thing, right? Abundant. And kind of the same at the hospital. Like we go through, we're about to hit our peak busy season,
Yep.
right? And overtime and bonus pay and all these things are gonna start rolling in here probably the next month. And you're gonna have people flocking for that, flocking for it. And back when I was at the prison, it was like I would do prison. I would teach at night sometimes or pretty consistently. And I would go up and I would do ski patrol on the weekends one day a week.
Right.
And they would always ask me, like, well, why not just come back here to the prison and work an overtime shift because you're gonna get paid time and a half. It's gonna be more money. I'm like, I mean, you're not wrong. It is gonna be more money. And the purpose behind working that is more money, but it's also the opposite of that is like I make enough extra from the ski patrol and from teaching, and I enjoy those things immensely that by doing those, it doesn't put me back into the same thing over and over and over
Sure.
again. So instead of doing 6 days at the prison, I'm doing 5 days there, 1 day on the mountain where I'm doing what I love or being with people that I
Sure.
love. And so it's preventing burnout because I'm not getting that repetition. I'm not putting myself in the same place of work where I'm stressed or burnt out or getting overwhelmed with. And I get some variety in both what I'm doing for the work and then also who I'm with and management and hours. I can go work for 4 hours at the school, get a little bit extra cash, go hang out with, yourself and Taylor and like other friends and just teach and have a great time and then go home. And so it's different. And I do that specifically for that reason. That's why I have multiple jobs, isn't because I necessarily need to, but I do that rather than picking
Sure.
up overtime shift at the
Absolutely.
hospital.
And I'm in the same boat. There's a big reason why I don't pick up overtime at the station. I'll try to pull what I can, but like if I'm especially because I'm 45 miles away from work.
Yeah.
If I'm not already up there, it makes it kind of a big deal to pick up a 12-hour overtime shift or
Go
a
up there.
24
Yeah.
compared to, hey, I get paid really well in comparison to where I live. And my part-time job actually keeps me mentally healthy, happy, and um, I don't want to say sane, but it's really the word that comes to mind. Um, where I can
Yeah.
almost turn off the firefighter brain and turn on a teaching brain, and right? As close as those lines get together, they never overlap, so I'm never using the same I don't wanna say the same thought process, but it's a different type of thought process, and I think you probably understand what I'm trying to say a little bit easier. Um,
You're critically thinking in different ways,
yeah,
right? We have lesson
absolutely.
plans, we have a structure. We know outside of what some of the questions they might be asking us that night, we know
Right,
what the plan is and what to expect.
absolutely.
Where you go to work and yeah, you can expect to do X, Y, and Z, but because of the nature of where we work, you go to work and you're always a little bit more heightened in terms of on the edge of your seat
Absolutely.
because you never know what's going to come through those doors next. You never know when that next call out's
You
going to
bet.
be. And then what is it going to be?
Yep.
Right. Just like we've had this discussion back and forth about like, you get paid to sleep. I get to sleep in my own bed. And while, yeah, you get paid to sleep, and that's great. How well do you actually sleep during those hours? Because personally, I remember sleeping in the stations and whatnot and never being fully rested because I'm always like, I never fully hit REM or whatever
Absolutely.
because you're always just like on that edge of like, any second now, I might be up and having to put my boots back on and run some call, right? Which is part of the job. And I love doing it. But there's something to be said if you're going home at night every night and sleeping in your own bed,
And
you know what I
actually
mean?
getting quality sleep. Yeah, I
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
wholeheartedly agree, and that's kind of the kicker, right? Sleep is that magic word that resolves the problems of first responders, um, that every
That none of
healthcare
us get enough of.
professional will I guarantee you they'll attest to, right? All of our peer support people, everyone who's been through any bit of mental health training, sleep is the number one deciding factor whether or not things get better or worse.
What is it? Sleep,
Sleep,
healthy
healthy
diet.
diet, and exercise.
Yeah.
Um, and you are completely correct. I mean, I don't remember the last time I was at the firehouse and left after day 2 feeling actually like I slept, right? No matter what, even if you luck out and you don't run any calls at night, you're still not getting 8 hours worth of sleep if you get 8
Yeah.
hours. You know,
Yeah.
it's I always do the rule
It's
of
not
just
the same.
cutting it in half because really only 4 of that are gonna be restful isn't even the word I wanna use, but as close to restful as possible.
Yeah. But
So, back on the burnout then. So, Ben, what do you do to mitigate your burnout? How do you notice the signs and symptoms of it when you feel it's coming on? What's your thought process behind the way you try to handle it?
um, it's taken a long time. Like you said, like burnout's not something that we teach, right? We should.
Absolutely.
And I feel like employers are doing more for this, right? But at the same time, it's like a double-edged sword. Like they're encouraging us to go do things and take time off, and but then they're also like, "Oh, hey, we're short-staffed. You want some extra
Y
money? Come
yeah,
on in, because we have it for
yeah.
you, and we need help."
Yep.
Right? So they're like, there's like, we want you to take care of yourself at the same time. We also want you to come and work.
Right.
Um, so, but outside of that, um, I recognize burnout in myself in terms of like motivation just gone down the drain. Right? I'll get up, I'll go to work, but in my outside life, if it's not a responsibility or a commitment that I have given to somebody else, it's not gonna happen,
Yep.
right? So I don't have a set schedule. If I don't have things like that in place and I'm burnt out, then nothing else is
Sure.
happening, right? I become very reclusive and very just like
I
meh in
I
myself,
agree
right?
completely.
One of those things of like if I didn't have the two dogs I have, I wouldn't leave my house at all, right? So they give me that responsibility, like, hey, go for a walk, go do this, go to the park, because I now have to make sure that their well being
Right.
is also involved,
Right.
right? Um, Other than that, it's kind of forcing my when I recognize I am getting into that burnout phase. It's socialization, it's playing games, right? Like getting out of that mind thought process,
Sure.
and finding ways to. I think being in healthcare, a lot of us are very analytical, right? And we tend to overthink and we tend to replay things oftentimes, right? Um, Good or bad, right? We just can't shut our brains down. And this also might just be the ADHD part of my brain saying this, but um, so doing things that can allow us to focus on one thing and shut our brain out and just kind of
Sure.
decompress, right? That's why like I do play video games from time to time. But a bigger aspect of this is actually this came up in conversation a few weeks back of I rode my motorcycle into work and one of the nurses, I walked into our staff room and I put my helmet away and all of a sudden I'm being questioned. Like, how can you do that? Like, how can you ride a motorcycle knowing what you know and having seen what you've seen and all these other things? I'm like, it's one of the few times that my brain
Yeah.
closes up, shuts down,
Absolutely.
right? It's me, the bike, and the environment, and maybe some slight background music. But I'm not having conversations with myself in my own head. I'm not running through things because I can't,
Sure.
right? We're driving or sitting on the couch, watching movies or even reading a book. My mind will not, and that does not help the burnout aspect because then I'm high thinking, critically thinking at work and my brain's all over the place with all of the patients I have and everything else going on. And then I go home and it's the same thing. And so your brain can never just go, at
Sure.
peace. So for me, it's video games, especially with like my friends, yourself, Connor, where you're just solely involved with that. Certain books will get me out of that state. Socializing with friends, where you're just having a good time and having a good conversation and your mind's occupied, or the motorcycle
Sure.
would be the things that I do. And you just got to make sure you get them in adequate
Yeah.
amounts,
Right.
right? And that's also why like I love teaching, because I love teaching and it's different from the main job. But then I go to work and it's you, it's Taylor, it's Connor, it's Peyton, it's my
Right.
friends, right? Not that I'm not friends with people at the hospital, but it's a very different level
Absolutely.
in terms of, trauma bonding versus not trauma
Yeah.
bonding. We at the school, I think, have more socially in
Yep.
common in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
So
I agree. Now, is your tell me about how your administrators handle burnout. How do they support you and your fellow nurses and the rest of the staff at the hospital? How do they support you guys if you notice signs of burnout or if they notice you're having symptoms of burnout?
really all they do and all they can do, I think in a lot of ways is encourage us to take the time off, right? Um, I remember when I was going through nursing school, um, I was full time as a tech at the hospital, right? While also teaching part
Yep.
time and in school, right? So like I was had a full load. Um, and I went to them and we had, I think, one part time tech there at all. And she had been a part time tech there for years,
Right.
right? It wasn't a thing that we
Right.
did. Um, and I went to him and like, well, I'm in nursing school. You're now saying that there is a chance that I come here full time once I'm a nurse, which I would absolutely love to do. Um, the variation in schedules at the hospital plus the variation of school is not going to work for me.
Right.
That's enough of a stressor for me to go like this is a little bit too
Sure.
much. Uh, and I went to them like, look, I don't. My biggest thing here is I don't want to push through this, become burnt out here before I even start my nursing career,
Sure.
right? Because if I burn out as a tech during school, I'm not going to want to come back here and be a nurse for you. That's 100% that, right? So they worked with me and they let me come down. I did 1 day a week there for the rest of that 2 years. I started teaching more to make up for income purposes, and it all kind of just worked out. So my management personally did really well with that kind of stuff. Like even at the school, if they notice that, you're being burnt out or you're kind of, that you're lackluster about
Sure.
things, they'll encourage you also to like take a break. Don't teach for a little bit. Come, it's always the door's always open, but like step away. Go take care of yourself. Focus on your life, your priorities, the things that you need to, right? Um, but that's about all they can do. Like they can't force you to. Well, they can force you to take time off, but they're not going
Sure.
to. I don't think any employer is going to say, "Hey, you can't come to work because you're burnt out."
Right.
It's usually a, "Hey, you're burnt out, and now you messed up, so now you're taking
Yeah.
time off."
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
But what about yourself? What do you see in like because you're
Um,
very much more of a go getter in a lot of ways, I think, than myself
sure. Um,
in different ways.
and it's different, right? I'm at a smaller agency that's a little bit more intimate, right? Everyone knows everyone's name compared to a large department where you might not know everyone if you do a overtime shift swap somewhere else, right? But
Yeah.
um, we're a small enough crew, right? We're a 3 crew department that you kind of know everything about everybody. And you know what normal looks like for them. And specifically with my crew, specifically um, my captain and I have been together for 2 years now. He is such a stud, but we're almost like on the same mental wavelength for those 2 days a week when we're at the station together. Where I can tell if he's actively in that phase right before his burnout, because
Yeah.
he gets super irritable. You can tell he doesn't sleep right. He doesn't eat anything at all, and it's weird because I go out of my way to see these things out of him, but then when I really think about it, I notice the exact same signs and symptoms happen to me, to my paramedic, like, to everyone on the crew when they're at that stage of, "Hey, man, sometimes I just can't play fireman anymore," right? And
Yeah.
it takes a really special type of person to be a fireman. It takes an even more special of an individual to notice the signs and symptoms of taking a break from being a fireman. Um, but personally, I'm the same way. I also get I'm super involved with the mental health um, scheduling, coordinating, peer support aspect of my fire district, um,
Yeah.
which is a blessing. I really love to be in that role because I get to actually help people in different ways, right? And it's not me helping individuals in the back of an ambulance or on a fire call. It's me helping my peers and their spouses and their families and giving them resources they need. So that's kind of cool. But I'm in the same boat as you, right? When I notice the signs and symptoms of my own burnout, right, I get super irritable. I do not sleep well whatsoever. Um, that's when I kind of start to take a step back from certain things. I won't teach as much.
Yeah.
But
I've
I
noticed
also
that.
notice that I actually don't reply to people when I'm in that burnout phase. Like I don't reply to text messages. You can hardly get me with with a phone call. Um, which is kind of one of the newer ones I've noticed I started doing. So working through that one. Um,
Well, because I mean, this thing only adds more to that stress, right?
absolutely.
Especially with like you, right? Because you have that on your phone, so you get paid to just get call out on your
Yeah.
phone, right? Um, and like for me, like I don't have that same stressor. I fall into the same boat though. Like when I'm burnt out, like I just don't like I don't talk to a lot of like there are a select few people I'll respond to,
Mhm.
right? Um, but that's something to be said for like, Taylor has 2 phones, right? And one of them is that he gets his pages, his call outs, it's his work
Yeah,
phone. And I think that allows him, if he's not at work, he can leave that one behind.
absolutely.
He never does, but he could leave that one behind and not worry
Yeah,
about it,
no,
right?
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
But
Um, but man, it's a tricky animal to try to fight. It's really hard to find balance with it because I say this lightly. I don't think there really is a happy medium balance with burnout. You kind of it's either there or it's not there,
yeah,
right? It's not like mental health things where it can show up in a million different ways. Like once you find out what your burnout looks like, you know if you're experiencing it. Um,
I think there are different levels of it,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
I feel like you hit a stage in EMS in healthcare where like I feel like you will have that potential to just kind of always live like in like a low level of just like slight burnout. And I think that's partly because of the um mental taxation that it takes from everybody, mental, physical, emotionally, Um, it's a matter of whether like your work environment is enough to help,
Sure.
right? Like I love my team at the hospital, right? I love my team at the school. And so when I go there and I work as taxing as it can be, there's enough fun within there that it helps up the
Yeah.
burnout, right? When I become truly burnt out, like I got really burnt out at the school back in like 2018. And that was because I was doing, multiple classes at a time and I didn't have help and I didn't have my team. And so it was a lot of it was on me and I just, it burnt me out so quick. And I've been doing it for so long and I didn't have the team that we have in place
True.
now.
Yeah, now
And I
look at
think
it.
that makes a huge
Now you don't even
difference.
have to work.
Yeah. I can just coordinate,
Exactly, and you have someone to help you do
delegate.
the other half of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, and I love that you found that for yourself, right? I love you found the happy medium of loving both of your jobs, seeing the beauty in it, but also understanding that you're the priority, right? Because as much as we wanna be responders and help people, we both know wholeheartedly, I can't do anything for you if I don't do things for myself first.
Amen.
Right, and then it goes back
Amen.
to better sleep, better exercise, better eating, but at the end of the day, I can't be a first responder, I can't be a provider, I can't sit in the back of an ambulance with somebody and go out of my way to take care of them in a way that is appropriate unless I'm taking care of myself, right? Because we see mistakes happen with burnout, right? And that's kind of the really big kicker that you mentioned earlier. They're not gonna ask you to leave until someone gets hurt because of your burnout, right? Because of the
Yeah.
actions you've taken to not prioritize yourself. Um, so
Which sucks
big
because
time.
then at that point, like, not only are you facing the fact that you're now being written up or you're now in trouble from your department or your workplace because of burnout, you also let burnout potentially negatively impact someone else's life
Absolutely.
from a patient standpoint. And that I think can haunt you for years to
Yep,
come, depending on severity of that impact,
yep,
right? So another reason to really focus in and find out what your burnout cues are. Look for burnout within your own um, coworkers and friends and family, which is like I harped on you, like take your PTO, utilize
yep,
it. All right. There's no, especially when you have that much of it, unless like I said, there's the rare occasion, like if you're saving up to pay it out because you have some expense or whatever, sure. But the 96 hours or the 48 hours that you're going to utilize to take a set off, you're going to replenish that
yeah,
in no time. Right.
absolutely. And I'm there with you. I mean, like I said earlier, it's a weird happy medium that you have to try to find that keeps you in it longer, right? Because there's some
Yeah.
things we can mitigate, but the number one killer of first responders is cardiac related emergencies, right? And we both know full well that if you don't have any predisposed conditions that will give you cardiac related emergencies, the sleep is
You're
the
you're
number
gonna get
one
of you.
factor that changes all of it. Is you having healthy sleep
Mhm.
habits, you eating right, and you exercising, right? That's all it and I mean, I don't wanna say it's
All it
all it
takes.
takes, but really, when you break it down to, like I said, no predisposed health factors, that's what changes it, right? That's what makes this
Yeah.
career fun and beautiful is when you get to see the good sides of it, right? Obviously, we don't only see the good sides, but take it with a grain of salt. There's a big learning curve to this.
Yeah. Well, good. I think it's important that people recognize and learn and take care of, like you said, take care of themselves, prioritize themselves, and there's that aspect of work. Let me try to get this right. What is it? Work to live, don't live to work,
Yep,
right? We love what we
yep,
do, and that's part of our lives, and it's part of our identity because we're in healthcare and EMS. But I have switched. I no longer get up every day to go to work, right? I am utilizing my jobs, my careers that I love to live a better life for myself and take my vacations and have the fun outside of work while also having some fun inside of work because I enjoy what I do,
absolutely.
right?
And
So,
the older I get, the more I notice what a blessing that phrase you just said is, right? Like the large majority of people um don't love what they do, right? They get up for
yeah,
work and it's like a chore in the morning, right? I get up to go on shift and I'm like the happiest Mr. Go Lucky
yeah,
guy with all the windows down on the drive into work, right? Playing some music, right? With a big old smile on my face, or shift change is happy and exciting, right? Making breakfast is happy and exciting because I know that I absolutely love what I do. And it's the same at school, right? If I get on off shift and I'm like, oh, I get to go teach tonight, right? I don't say, oh, I have to go teach tonight. I
Yeah.
say, oh, I get to go teach tonight, right? Because it really is a blessing to find something you love to do with people you
Yeah.
love doing it with administrators that support. Like in both places I work, my administrators are the most supportive people I know in every facet of the job, which
Yeah.
is such a blessing. It is in comparison to some places.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think that's where people like even in those office workers and things like that, like you gotta find at the end of the day, you gotta find your
You
passions,
bet.
right? And we're lucky enough, like especially yourself, right, to wake up every day and love what you do, which makes doing that so much better. But if you are not fortunate enough, which I feel like the vast majority of people are not fortunate enough to wake up every day and go to work and call that their passion,
Absolutely.
right? Like you look at an accountant, and there are going to be accountants out there that love what they do,
Sure.
100%,
Sure.
right? But it's not probably not their
Sure.
passion, arguably,
Sure.
right? You're not at home in their free time
Running number.
doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, maybe they are.
Maybe.
Who knows? So finding your passions outside of work, I think, is more important and than finding a job or a career if they can't be your passion to then allow you the money and time to then pursue your passions outside,
Absolutely. I
right?
agree wholeheartedly.
And we just happen to do a little bit of both, which is why I'm almost surprised that burnout is such a big thing because we love what we do, but I think the mental, emotional, and physical taxation that it has on us in the career that we have chosen
Sure.
is why.
Sure. Um, I think a huge factor of that, Ben, specifically in the fire side, um, that I don't personally experience. My department doesn't buy into this, at least as of now, because we're still a rather new department. We don't mando guys, right? You're not gonna get mandatory overtime, right? It's not a
Yeah,
hey, Nick, you're staying over on C shift today. Sorry. Like we don't do that. We don't buy into that. At least as of right now.
yeah, you don't have the need
'Cause
to, so why would you?
exactly, right? And I'm sure anyone who works with an agency that actually mandatories their guys probably has a completely different facet on the way they look at this job than
Yeah,
the way you and I are looking at it right now, right?
yeah,
Which I'm sure can lead to a lot more negative complications down the line in terms
oh,
of
100%.
extended burnout where it's, "Hey," you call someone and you're supposed to be going home and you say, "No, I got held over today. I gotta do another 24." Right, and you gotta cut plans or things change and, like I said, I can't buy into that because I don't actively do it. We don't do that in my department.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well, we have on-call shifts at the
yeah,
hospital. You're required 2 in a schedule if you're
yeah,
out, right? Um, the way it used to be is it used to be on call,
sure,
right? Where you could get called in during this 12-hour period or 6-hour period. You could do like 2 12s or 4 6s if you wanted to, right? Um, but for that length of time, you had to be within an hour of being at the hospital, right? That is kind of the rule of thumb. Um, which is fine, but it's kind of that same thing as being on call. Like I could at any second right now, I could be interrupted, right? And that put a lot of stress on people because it was also then heavily abused,
sure, yeah,
right? Or it had a higher
sure,
potential. They changed that and they changed the wording and the policies behind it to now it's what they call a surge shift, which means that they can only call us in if they have exhausted all the resources. So we can get nurses from other parts of the hospital,
mhm,
and we oftentimes do. And so if that is not an option, and we are so slammed that we have to have the extra body.
right,
that's when you call in that search shift,
Right.
which is great, which because it means that we get called in less. But at the same time, it also means that when we get called in,
You're actually gonna go do some work. Yeah.
it's gonna be a hot
Sure.
mess, right?
Absolutely.
You're not gonna go in and have a casual day at
Yeah.
work. You're gonna get called in, and for the next few
All
hours,
hell's breaking loose.
you're gonna be running around,
Absolutely. I got
and that's
And
fine.
are you still paid for
Um,
that while you're at home on okay. So so it's still
it
classified as
it's
oh,
decreased,
okay.
right? On call pay, so it's not like your hourly
Sure.
wage, but there is a dollar value
Sure.
there.
Okay.
So,
Word.
but we're hitting. We're gonna do half hour. We're
I
hitting
know. Well, we can
45
slim it
minutes.
down. We can slim it
um, so I think that was a great talk. I think burnout's a big thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about it
Yeah.
more in later podcasts. But great again, Nick. Nice to talk to you again. Love chatting with
Always
you
a
all the
pleasure.
time.
Thank you for having me.
Do this more. Get some of the guys on board as
Absolutely.
well. Have more discussions. Um, take care of yourselves, people. Prevent that burnout. Use your PTO, please. Sit there talking to the unit. Utilize it. Um,
Sleep, sleep, sleep.
sleep, sleep, sleep. I need to utilize
Sleep,
that one more.
sleep, sleep.
I
I
think that's
cannot.
my
I will die on that hill.
sleep,
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 sleep.
sleep.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Well, see
talk
you
to you
guys.
later.